Hi everyone, my name is Stephen Simon and welcome back to C Sharp Corner Live. C Sharp Corner Live. We are back with another episode of Ask Me Anything. And as always, I'm your host Stephen Simon. And as always, you see me every other day at 10 a.m. Eastern. So thank you everyone who is joining us today. And before we go ahead and actually talk about today's shows, as always, I'm going to do a quick announcement of the different live shows that we do on C Sharp Live. And always remember that 10 o'clock Eastern US time, mark the time. Every day we do live shows, and in fact we do almost 10 live shows a week. And I say that we stream 8 days in a week. Starting from Monday, we have our Azure AI show, where we talk about the entire ecosystem of data and AI and machine learning from Microsoft perspective. Then on Tuesdays, we have product showcase of Coffee with Pros. Coffee with Pros is more like a video podcast where we invite people from the tech community or tech background and talk about their day-to-day life and how they spend their work. So no coding or slides. Then on Wednesdays, we have C Sharp Corner MVP show where we feature our community leaders from the C Sharp Corner community, ask their journey on how did they become a C Sharp Corner MVP, followed by a technical session. Then we have an amazing new show that runs bi-weekly. It's called AI Photo. It's by Eve Bari and Hokan, where they teach you data science from very scratch. And in fact, they teach you data science from mathematics. From mathematics, they completed 5 series. Then they talked about T-SQL. Then to the next coming 3 to 4 weeks, they're going to talk about Python and more. So that's a very interesting show too. Then we have a bit of AI show by Hank and Amy. They're cloud advocates at Microsoft. It's again a chit chat show where you can go ahead and talk to guests on how they spend their day-to-day life in the field of AI, what kind of projects they're working. And also the interesting part is after the live show ends, you can actually go ahead and join a team meeting and talk to guests. So that's a pretty interesting thing. Then on Thursday, as you see, it's Thursday, so it's AMA at 10 a.m. Eastern, and we have very exciting guest waiting behind the scenes. I'm gonna bring her live very soon. Then on Fridays, we have Growth Mindset. Then on Saturdays, we have Rocking the Code World with .NET Dave. .NET Dave, David McCarter is, I think, 14 or 15 times Microsoft MVP, very senior guy. He's gonna stream his 20th episode this Saturday, where he brings people from the .NET ecosystem. He has interviewed guys like Matt Stodgerson, Scott Hunter, Caitlin Dollard, Kendra Heavens, and many great people from the .NET ecosystem. Apart from that, every alternate week, we also do full stack work. Oh no, this is the wrong slide. Okay, apart from that, we do virtual conferences too. Every alternate week, we did SQL virtual conference for 2 days with around 30 speakers. Then we did Power Platform virtual conference, 5 days, 40 plus speakers. So all those contents are available on demand on C Sharp Live, and you can actually go ahead and rewatch them. So thank you everyone who is joining us again. Hi Pradeep, welcome to the live show. So yeah, so let's actually go ahead and talk about today's show. I'm really excited to host today's guest. Today's guest is actually Ayca Bas. She is a cloud developer advocate at Microsoft. She also looks into developer relations. I'm connected with her on LinkedIn and Twitter, and I see she's a great community leader. She also takes involvement in the Imagine Cup, and if I'm not wrong, she was also a Microsoft student partner. I hope so I'm not wrong. And because I was a Microsoft student partner too, and I love that program. They have changed the name, but never mind. The program is amazing. So let's go ahead and invite our speaker guest of the show, Microsoft, I say it, Microsoft Graph Queen, Ayca Bas. Hi Ayca, welcome to the AMA Live show.
Hi, such a nice introduction. Thank you so much for the video.
All right. And Ayça, how have you been doing all these times? How's life? And actually, where are you joining us today from?
I'm at home, Dubai. Yeah, so by the way, I was a student partner and now they
Mhm.
call us student ambassador. It was 8, 9 years ago. So yeah, it was a correct information.
That's nice. That's great. So you're joining us from Dubai, which is an amazing place, and I think the best place to be at during this time. So how's life at your place? How has things actually changed, if they have? Because I see Dubai is all good now. You can go ahead and hang out. So how has life changed, or not even actually?
We don't have much restrictions right now.
Mm-hmm.
As long as we're prepared with our masks, and most of the restaurants are really good at the cleaning stuff, and they're really good at keeping people and low number of people in the restaurants and so on. So it is kind of normal if I compare
Mm-hmm.
to other countries, like where I'm officially from,
Yeah.
Turkey, for example. Right now, Dubai is in kind of better place. At least we don't have lockdown, so we can go out and eat and at least walk around. So
Yeah.
it is good.
That sounds great. That's pretty interesting that you're living a normal life. So that's great. I just so I did go ahead and give a quick introduction about you, but maybe if you'd like to go ahead and tell who you are, what you do in your day-to-day life at work, maybe a quick 30 seconds or 40 seconds into that would be great.
Yes, sure. So I work at Microsoft as a cloud advocate. Before that, I have experience 4 years at Microsoft in Microsoft Premier Field Engineering team. I was working at Microsoft Services as a Premier Field Engineer. So I've been working with customers all around Europe, Middle East, and Africa.
Mm-hmm.
Probably I work more than 100 different customers in 4 years, and it was a lot of traveling, a lot of different technologies. I've been responsible of Azure developer technologies like web apps, bots, cognitive services, and so on. Right now, what I'm doing is as a cloud developer advocate, I am focusing on creating content, a good quality content for our community. And thanks for the title for Graph Queen, by the way. So my focus is around Microsoft Teams and Microsoft Graph for developers, and we
Mm-hmm.
just keep both of them under the roof of Microsoft 365 development. These days, I'm focusing on beginner level content most of the time, and we have great news on that area because we recently published really great modules at Microsoft Learn that I'm going to talk all about today.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, in the title, the designation is pretty interesting itself. Cloud advocate. I do remember previously Microsoft had this technical evangelist who were kind of rock stars, and I now see Microsoft has come up with this great job role that is cloud advocates. And yeah, I think we have many good friends from that program. So definitely, cloud advocate program is really amazing, and thanks to all that work you and your team do for the community. We really appreciate it. So, Ayça, you did tell that you work primarily on the Microsoft Graph, right? So for people who do not understand or who are hearing it for the very first time, how would you like to explain Microsoft Graph in a very simple or a layman's language?
Yes, so great question. Great start question. So if we consider Microsoft 365 as another cloud of Microsoft, so we have Azure, of course, and we have a lot of great products there. We also have Microsoft 365 Cloud. And as you know, every single day we use all these products like Outlook, we send, receive emails, we chat in Teams, and we take note on OneNote, and we just share files on OneDrive, and so on and so forth. All this data we create stays under Microsoft 365 Cloud. And
Mm-hmm.
there is actually a way to reach out this data and use this data in your own application, such as if you want to receive your files, if you want to get your files from OneDrive, or if you want to retrieve all of your channel messages on Teams, or if you just want to post an email every time something happens. So these kind of things can be done using Microsoft Graph API. So
Okay.
basically, Microsoft Graph API is the API for Microsoft 365, where you can gather users' data.
That sounds great. So it means like if I am using a service like maybe an Outlook, Teams, or maybe OneDrive, I can go ahead and build an application and actually fetch the data from there, right? So that's great. So that's pretty interesting. If you have bigger teams, and maybe if I want to go ahead and maybe create an application, I don't have to just go ahead and mess up with every single API, right? And maybe an API for Yammer. I do remember that earlier there were different APIs for Yammer, different APIs for OneDrive. Now I can just go to Microsoft Graph APIs and just use those APIs to go ahead and build my one-stop product.
I think it's a really nice point to highlight. Right now, if you want to get files from OneDrive or get emails from Outlook or get chat messages from Teams, you don't need to use all different APIs for Teams, Outlook, and blah, blah. They centralize all this data under one single endpoint, which is graph.microsoft.com. You just customize the queries every time you want to gather some other data. So you just have to remember one API and that's all.
That's great. I mean, that sounds pretty promising. So, Ayça, now when I suppose I'm a developer, I want to go ahead and start using the APIs, right? That makes sense. What other products would Microsoft give us on the fly apart from Microsoft Graph? I know there are many other. Is there any other products you want to talk about specifically for today?
Yeah, so for Microsoft Graph, as you know, there's a big selection of SDKs and the platform support. But if you're a beginner, especially, and if it is your first time or if you do this couple of times, but you're not expert of it, if you want to handle authentication, and let's say you want to put a login button and then you want to gather calendar events, and let's say you want to get people information, there's a great solution in Microsoft Graph. We call it Microsoft Graph Toolkit. Microsoft Graph Toolkit is actually a collection of reusable web components and authentication providers. These are really easy to consume, especially if you're a beginner. It is just one line of HTML code for you to handle the authentication in the background, as well as for you to handle UI as well, because it comes with pre-built UI. Basically, it is just 2-3 lines of code and you're done. You cover up all the authentication as well as all the UI piece, because all the components will give a look and feel of Microsoft experience. So I would definitely recommend Microsoft Graph Toolkit for the ones who's just starting to learn about Microsoft Graph today.
That's great. Actually, you just said that to go ahead and maybe work with the authentication or maybe with the files, right? So, so people who are watching it, and usually authentication is very necessary, but at the same time, it is pretty complex. You have to manage the sessions, you need to make the request, make sure you're getting the right tokens, and then you have to manage it. So you are telling that with Microsoft Graph Toolkit and using some components, I can actually go ahead and just plug in using 2 or 3 lines of code in my existing application or maybe a new application and add all this authentication in my application, right?
Yeah, exactly. Actually, my colleague Beth, she also mentioned this in a couple of different webinars as well. She's a part of Microsoft Graph Toolkit team. They did a couple of research with partners, developers, and they listened what are the concern areas about Microsoft Graph. And the biggest one is authentication. Even though it's necessary for 99% of the apps we are building, it is kind of complex for the ones who are just starting today. That's why Microsoft Graph Toolkit published the very first component as login component, which is actually one line of HTML tag, which handles all the authentication, plus it comes with the UI. So just it does everything for you.
I would definitely love to go ahead and use that, because I do know that authentication is kind of a complex, right? People struggle with it a lot, and so that definitely looks very promising. And Ayça, all this time you have been using a term that is called components, right?
Yeah.
You have been saying, so what are actually components?
You want to see it?
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah, sure. So let me share my screen first. Okay. Screen 2, 3. Okay, wait. I just have to figure out which one is screen 3.
Yeah, that often happens. By the
Yeah.
time, yeah, you got it. By the time you figure it out, guys wondering, even I was just checking, even Alexa, Google now faces a lot of problems saying your name.
Oh yeah, that's true. Actually, Google called me Ayca,
Mhm.
and I just changed the pronunciation as I and
Mhm.
CHA. Then I
Uh,
didn't use an A letter at the beginning. Then it worked. Okay, so let's go ahead and check what are the components. If you go to mgt.dev, this is the Microsoft Graph Toolkit playground. And this is the great practice place for the components because it's a place you can edit all the code and you see the changes on the code right away, like this. So on the left, we have all the components like agenda, login, people picker, and so on. And if you customize any of them on the right side, you see under the canvas, the look of the component, the behavior of the component will automatically modified. So just an example, this is the agenda component, mgt-agenda. Literally, we use just one single line and you get exactly the same result on the left. So there's no CSS, there's no JS. This is just like one HTML tag and you have the full experience. And if you want to play around a little bit, we can add attribute like group by day and oops, I don't know why I click Control Save. But yeah, on the left, you see all the events are grouped under the related day automatically. Friday and Saturday and so on. Same thing is available for all the other components, such as MGT login, the most popular component, because this gives us the experience of sign-in button and authentication, as well as this calls graph in the background together user profile. We have other ones too, like MGT tasks. This calls Microsoft Graph together tasks from the planner. Basically, all these components you see calls Microsoft Graph in the background for you, so that you don't need to handle calling API, gathering data part. With just one line of HTML, it is done for you. So if you want to learn what else you can do with these components, like what are the properties, if you can style it and so on, there's docs on the right side of canvas. If you click docs, for now I'm inside of MGT tasks. Then this documentation is specifically for MGT tasks. When I scroll down, I'll see the attributes available, properties. Also, there are events and CSS. You can literally customize the way components look. So by default, it comes with look and feel like Microsoft experience. But if you want to fit the style in your own app, then you can definitely use these CSS and other attributes too. And we also have dark theme for all the components. For the ones who love dark theme, I mean, I'm sure lots of developers will be looking for a dark theme, right?
Yeah, that is the first thing I saw when you were going through different components. Like every component has a dark theme option.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, that's great. That's great. So this is pretty great. And Ayça, when someone's coming from a web development ecosystem, and when they see that hey, there are some different tags, which is actually the components. So this is very familiar to them, and it gets very easy for them to go ahead and get started. Because maybe you're coming from Blazor, you're coming from Angular, React, or maybe Vue. You are habitual of using custom components. So when Microsoft Graph Toolkit gives you all this on the fly, so it just rapidly scales your development. So that's pretty great, and I really love it. So having said that, Ayça, there many a time, and I do also remember that you said that you can go ahead and customize your existing components, right? But is there a way that I can also go ahead and create my own components? Is that a possibility?
Your own component, you mean?
Yeah.
For example, the point where, let's say, the data you want to get from Microsoft Graph is not available as a component, right?
Yep.
So for that, we have a great solution. We call it MGT Get. MGT Get is a component that lets you use any Microsoft Graph query to gather any data you like, so that it will be 100% flexible for you to, let's say, gather your emails, or let's gather your files from OneDrive, your notes from OneNote, your chat messages from Teams, and so on. So basically, just as an example, getting emails from Outlook is not a part of the components. As you see, we have agenda, login, people picker, task, and so on. But MGT email does not exist. But what if I want to get all list of emails, right, from my Outlook? Here in MGT Get, if I just drag it a little bit here, I break it. Okay. That's interesting.
I like the UI. I really like that the UI is built with all the modern material UI that we have. So even if you don't want to go ahead and mess with the designs and the UI and the UX that we get on the fly from the Microsoft Graph Toolkit, it's pretty promising. It looks pretty good.
Yeah, so in MGT Get, what we can do is we can define any Microsoft query as a resource. This time it is me messages. Let's say if you want to get your files, then it will be me, let's say, recent files or files shared with me. Or if it is something else, then you just have to update this piece. And then you're going to define which version of Graph you want to go, beta or version 1, and you will define the scope, and that's all. The only part you have to do additionally in MGT Get is you will be responsible of designing the UI piece as well. So it requires you to write template inside of the MGT Get, and then you will get any data you like here. Just an example, you get email subject, and then we get people, person, whoever sent the email, and the body preview. So it's like half of the email content. So this is basically it. If the graph query you're looking for, the data you're looking for is not available, you can go ahead and consume any graph query from MGT Get.
Okay. That sounds great. So a quick question, Ayça. In the beginning of the Graph Toolkit demo, you did say one of the pretty demanded component is the login component, the authorization component, right? So what different kind of authorization we have? Can we have it from Microsoft SharePoint or maybe from Teams? Do we have multiple options, or is just Microsoft 365?
So Microsoft Graph Toolkit has different providers. Of course, they have a provider, we call it MSAL provider, which supports connecting with Azure Active Directory. And you will have a proper authentication, proper Microsoft authentication when you use MSAL provider. And we generally use MSAL provider in our web apps like Angular React app or Vue app and so on. If you want to build a Teams tab or SharePoint web part, then there are providers for Teams tab and SharePoint web part as well. So there are multiple different providers available for the ones who are looking for, building different stuff. Also, if the provider you're looking for is not available, there's an option to create custom provider. You can go ahead and create your own provider so you can consume Graph Toolkit components using your own custom provider as well.
Wow, that's great. So if I don't have any providers, I can actually go ahead and maybe use a third party also too. I can go ahead and integrate it, right? All right. Yeah. So that's great, Ayça. Anything else you want to cover with Microsoft Toolkit? Any missing pieces? or something?
Yeah, so as you see, the components, they're really short and easy to use. But if you want to check out where you can learn building applications and consuming components and providers in your own application, we recently published a great learn module. It is Get Started with Microsoft Graph Toolkit. It is 100% for beginners, and even the beginner who never used Toolkit or Microsoft Graph before, they can easily complete it in less than 30 minutes. If you want, I can quickly walk you through there.
Yeah,
If you
definitely.
go to ayca.ms/learn-mgt, you will be directed to the Learn module. Get started with Microsoft Graph Toolkit. This is actually great for beginners, as I mentioned. First, you have to create a Microsoft 365 tenant. There is a free program called Microsoft 365 Developer Program, which gives you a free sandbox, let's say free tenant and accounts for you to test and play around with Microsoft Graph and Microsoft Graph Toolkit as well. So if you create this one, you will have a free account and you will be the admin of that account. And there will be no cost charge. There will be no credit card or anything. It's 100% free and public. When you get your account, you will have a flexibility of playing around with the APIs and so on. And in our module, we started with what is Graph Toolkit, and you use the login component, and then you learn how to show data from Microsoft 365. We basically use agenda component. And at the end of all the things, you will have an app exactly like this. So you will have user logged in, and you see the calendar items from the user. So and we do all this with 3 lines of code. Basically, we use MSAL provider, and then we use login component and the agenda component, and we are done. As you see, it's a basic HTML.
Yeah, that's great. I think, I think as we move to more towards low code, no code development, I think as a developer, these things are very handy, saves a lot of your time, so that you can focus more on your product, making sure that you build a better product and don't waste much of your time over here. So I did this actually today in the morning, and I was really fascinated. This was my first Microsoft Graph Toolkit, a small kind of hello world project, and I really loved it. And quick question, Ayça, as you did say that you have a free Microsoft 365 developers program. One thing to mention that you do not need an Azure subscription, right? You stay away from it.
Exactly. As long as you have Microsoft 365 developer tenant, you will just go ahead and log into Azure portal, and you will not need any Azure subscription to register an app in Azure Active Directory. You just have to have the Microsoft 365 developer account, and that will be enough. So no Azure needed.
So is there like for Azure free accounts, we have a limit of like 30 days free, and then certain services are free. For this developer program, is it like free for lifetime, or they keep on renewing it after some time?
As long as you continue using your account for testing purposes and so on, as long as there's an activity in the account, it will be open and active all the time.
So make sure if you get free account, just go and keep making some web requests so that they feel that it is still active. You don't want to lose it. Yeah. So that's really amazing. That's pretty good program, I believe. And for people who do not know, or maybe who are getting started, go ahead and utilize that program. Sounds pretty interesting. We have a few questions coming in from the comments. Keep your comments coming in. Maybe is there any questions, Ayça, you think we should take it?
Okay, I can see the questions. Sorry if you just read anything right now.
Okay, let me go ahead and start from Pradeep maybe. Pradeep Subedi, he says, when it comes to graph throttling, at what scope does this take effect? Visit the current session, the user, the tenant, or the app? What is it?
So throttling is there basically for you to prevent having loads of data You can use paging for Microsoft Graph to prevent throttling, but if you want to deep dive what is the issue for debugging and troubleshooting purposes, Microsoft Graph has really good documentation covering all the throttling and paging issues as well. So I highly recommend you to go ahead and check out the official documentation for that. I think you're on mute, Simon.
No, Ayça, I was just testing if you can read my lips, but you failed me. But never mind.
Okay.
All right, so we have one questions from Arjun Lamichane. I think this makes sense. Is there any Angular model implementation for Graph, especially for Microsoft Graph SDK JavaScript? I think you do mention that Microsoft Graph gives you the SDKs, right? So they're definitely available out there.
Yes, so Angular, React, they're Python, they're all there for SDKs. You can again find all these SDKs. If I'm not mistaken, aka.ms/graph tutorials. So under the graph tutorials, you can check out what is available as SDKs, the platforms, and so on. As you say, Angular, JavaScript, React. We also have mobile support like iOS, Java, UWP, Xamarin. We have some tutorials for functions, bot framework, and so on. So if you want to check out what is available, I think tutorials are the great place to check because whatever is supported is available as a tutorial.
Yeah, and check Microsoft Learn platform too, because Ayça's team are working hard on that part too. So check Microsoft Learn too. We'll take one question from Arvin. Arvin is asking that in terms of performance or latency, which is better, query to using Graph Toolkit or simply through MSAL or AD API or hidden API, assuming information to query can be retrieved from both?
So in the perspective of performance, calling directly Microsoft Graph API versus calling Graph Toolkit is equal because Graph Toolkit is consuming Graph in the background as well. The capability is letting you consume Graph directly within the HTML or directly as part of your web application too. So performance-wise, there is basically no difference when it comes to the toolkit and either SDKs or directly making graph query calls in your app. It is recommended to use toolkit or the SDKs to get the best performance.
So just to nutshell that these components, toolkit, SDKs, they are just the wrapper around your APIs so that you don't have to spend time in making sure what you're making a request and JSON response and then maybe storing it so that you don't spend much time over there. So thanks, Owen, for that.
It's actually exactly the same thing when you just use Microsoft Graph API and consume it in your own app. Instead, Graph Toolkit is doing this stuff for you, and you just copy paste the tag.
That's fun. That's great. So I know there are more questions coming up, so we'll just run the show for another 5 minutes and we'll wrap it because I have booked Ayça's calendar only for 30 minutes. So MC Beniwal is asking, can you use Graph to get data from SharePoint 365? How easy it is to get and update SharePoint?
So Microsoft Graph has Microsoft Graph API can access SharePoint as well. You can basically do all get, post, and everything with Microsoft Graph if you want to work with SharePoint. And it is pretty much really easy, just like another API you consume. You can check again the official documentation, and you'll see Microsoft graph.microsoft.com. The query is changing when you call the SharePoint, and it is quite straightforward, just like any API, and you get all the data from SharePoint.
Yeah, just go and visit their documentation. I see it's very clear to the point documentation they have, and different kind of web requests you can actually go ahead and make. So this question is pretty interesting. I think it's asked by SEPO. It's like, is it fair to say that team is built with Microsoft Graph Toolkit?
It is
maybe a part of it.
No, actually, not the toolkit, because toolkit is just one way of calling Microsoft Graph, and it's One of the easiest way to call Microsoft Graph is Microsoft Graph Toolkit, but it is fair to say that all Microsoft 365 applications are calling Graph in the background, because whenever you type something in the chat and you click send, it's actually a graph call. Whenever you prepare an email and send to the users, it's a graph call. Or whenever you search someone on Teams, you say, let's say Simon, and you are looking for Simon's profile, it's again a graph call. So basically, Microsoft 365 is, let's say, built on the top of Graph. Graph is actually the data layer of Microsoft 365.
All right, so we're moving to last 5 minutes, and I think that there's one question from Mirza. He says, how can I find user member in a group with the Microsoft Graph API? So I think this is more like technical. If you just go ahead and do a quick Google search, that should definitely help, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, if you go to aka.ms/m-graph, you should get all the list of Microsoft Graph capabilities data sets, and getting a user member in a group is part of it, and it's very straightforward.
Okay, Ayça. So apart from that, you did share, you actually covered the entire ecosystem of the Microsoft Graph Toolkit. You gave the overview of Microsoft Graph. You also shared how people can go ahead and get started, what are the challenges it solves, and in different ecosystem, people can go ahead and use it. Apart from that, what are the other ways people can actually engage with Microsoft? Is the community, maybe some challenges, some programs, hackathon? Is there something that Microsoft team does it?
Yeah. So recently, our team just announced a new event coming up. If you're interested in learning more about Microsoft Graph, in April 14th, we have a new event coming, Learn Together, Building Apps with Microsoft Graph. This event is 100% focusing on learning together with our developers. So we will start everything from scratch. What is Graph? And then we will go into Microsoft Graph Toolkit as well, how you can use it, and how it will look like in your real application. And we also have sessions around how to get, let's say, files, events, and so on. So we really, really learn and code together with our beginners, learners about Microsoft Graph. So if you're interested in learning more, join this live session. We will all be there. My entire team will be there. So we're looking forward to see you all there.
So that's great, Ayça. Is it possible you can just drop that link to me and I can put it in the comments so everyone can follow along? So by the time you do that, so you said this is like from zero to hero, right? You're going to start from very scratch, and then you're going to go ahead and explore different offerings. So how long is this session? Is it like a 3 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours, or is it like full day?
Let me show you. So it's 2 hours in total, and this time we have 2 different time zones. The one for Asia Pacific and the one for Americas and Europe region. I think this will be easier for our developers in different regions as well. That's why we wanted to repeat our sessions twice and make sure to connect with everyone in every different region. So if you are in Asia Pacific, then join the session 2 p.m. in Asia time zone. And if you're in either North America or Europe, I think it would be easier for you to join in 8:30 PDT.
Okay, that's pretty interesting. I would love if I could just join a Teams meeting and also talk to the other members who are attending. that would be great. All right, so I see it also says what you learn. So definitely everyone go ahead and check that out. Link I have popped on the screen. It's aka.ms learn together -graph. So go ahead and check that out. Looks pretty interesting event. So hope you all join there and connect with Ayça and her team. So looks, Ayça, we are at 42 minutes, right? I'm not going to take this event any more than 45 minutes.
Too much, right?
Okay, and yeah, maybe. So Ayça, Ayça, apart from all this that you do, right? So yeah, apart from all this technical stuff that you do, Microsoft Graph, you've also involved in Microsoft Imagine Cup, and I was a Microsoft Imagine Cup national finalist too here in India twice. Could make it to the international finals, but never mind. So you participate and you were a judge in the Microsoft Imagine Cup too. You were a Microsoft student partner, so you have been involved into the community for a very long time. Apart from day-to-day job, what is your hobby? What do you do when you're free time? Would you like to go ahead and share that?
Yeah, so since Dubai is more like a beach city, I
Mhm.
usually I'm really interested in let's say ocean sports, and probably most of the time I'm at the beach. And other than that, I started knitting
Yeah,
um,
saw some of the
couple
posts.
months
Socks.
back, like 4 or 5 months back. I'm really into knitting, and also I'm very new in this, but I started doing some pottery too. So
Mhm.
um, in the free time, I really like connecting with the nature and doing stuff with my hand, like pottery or knitting or reading, because most of the time we're always at our laptops, and we
Yeah.
really miss opportunity to connect with nature. I try to do this as much as I can.
So that's great. So yeah, I saw that on Twitter too. So anyone who wants to go ahead and connect with Ayça on Twitter, she's pretty active over there. She shares the latest updates on Microsoft Graph Toolkit and the latest events and Microsoft Learn modules that they publish. So go ahead and connect with Ayça on Twitter. And yeah, see, she sometimes posts about knitting too. So a socks or something. Go ahead and check that out too. So Ayça, that was great. Ayça, I really loved hosting you. That was a great session. Any final thing that you want to plug in before we end the show?
Yeah, so it was really fun. Thank you so much for extending the session 15 minutes for me. I really enjoyed talking in the live stream, especially with you, Simon. It's been a long time. I'm looking forward to have a lot more invites and be here in C Sharp Corner. I really love your community. So looking forward to have some other sessions in the future too.
Yeah, actually, we would love to host you, definitely. And I, Stephen Simon, on behalf of entire C Sharp community, would like to thank you for all that you do for the community. And we would love to host you, right? So that's okay. So thank you so much, everyone who has joined us today. It was a great session. Go ahead. This live show will be available to everyone on C Sharp Corner YouTube and also on C Sharp Corner platform. You can go ahead and do that. I'm not gonna say like, share, subscribe, bell. I'm not gonna do that.
Click the
Press that
button.
bell icon. Oh my goodness, yeah, I'm not gonna say that, but we said it. So thank you so much, everyone who has joined. It was a great show. I'll see you next Thursday where we talk about ML.NET by one of our Microsoft MVP. So yeah, that's it. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining, and I just have a good evening. So
Thank you
bye,
so much.
everyone. See you
Bye.
next week. Ta-da.